Hey. Welcome to the Believe Fantasy Football Show. Lindsay and Fabs. You might not know me if you're a regular listener of this show, because I have not been on this show, but one time when Michael Fabiano was not here, but I'm going to be here for the next few weeks. I'm Lindsay Rhodes. You, of course, know Michael Fabiano. We're going to talk some fantasy football on one of my favorite weeks of the year. Fabs likes to tease me about how much I love the Combine, but it is Combine week, and we've got a lot of news, Fabs.
Yeah, we do. For those of you who don't know, of course, Lindsay and I have a show over at SiriusXM, Fantasy Dirt. Hopefully some of you dirtbags are watching. We will have more of the future of that show when we know what the future of that show is. But until then, you can hear us right here on the Believe Podcast Network, and we're glad to have you guys joining us. And if you don't know, Lindsay Rhodes on her honeymoon, with her wonderful husband, watched the Combine while he sat at the pool alone.
That is not true.
That's how much he loves the Combine.
I did watch the Combine. You always add you add your own little take on this, which is Matt is sitting alone at the pool. It's the middle of the night and we should be at dinner, but I canceled reservations to go to the back to the room to watch the Combine. Like, that's not how it happened, but I did have the Combine on in the room and I paid attention, and I like the Combine. I like draft season. I like the off season. I like free agency. I like all of it. I love roster building. I assume that many of you that are watching or listening to the a fantasy football podcast in the middle of the end of February, that you probably fall into the same category. That's one of the things actually that I think is kind of cool about fantasy football, right? Like, is that we're allowed to build our own rosters. So I assume that all of you guys are kind of into roster building to a certain degree and eager to find out who's going to be available to put on your fantasy football rosters. I am not sure what my energy level is going to be like, Fabs, because I have a what is that called when you go to the doctor once a year? Oh my God, why am I blanking? For a physical. I'm going to have a physical later.
Oh, I was like, what? Okay.
So yeah, I know, right? That could have gone in a lot of
like there's like a lot of like girl things that go
lady
on
doctors. Yeah, I wasn't gonna. I wouldn't bring that up. No, yeah, but what kind of moron doesn't just have the word physical like off the top of her? Anyway, I have a physical later today, and you're not allowed to eat or drink except for black coffee or water. And I don't drink black coffee. I drink coffee with like creamer that turns it a totally different color. So I'm drinking black coffee today just because I can't not. And so you might get a weird version of me.
Is it weird that like I hate coffee, but I like coffee ice cream with like little pieces of chocolate in it? Oh, it's so good.
Yes, I think that is weird.
It is weird. It's like I like peas, but I don't like pea soup. I don't know. I'm me. I'm strange like that. But
wait, you like peas, but you don't like pea soup?
Don't like pea soup, but I enjoy peas. Yeah, fresh peas. But pea soup is gross.
I'm the opposite. I actually like a split potato or a split pea soup.
Okay.
With the ham in it, weirdly, because I'm not a big ham person, but I could go the rest of my life without anyone serving me regular peas.
In our own
okay.
ways.
Anyway, yeah. So we've got lots to discuss here today on the show. Again, a lot of headlines. It's like the first day in Indianapolis where a bunch of head coaches and general managers are talking to the media, and they've given us some tidbits to chew on here from a fantasy standpoint. First, though, Bet Online continues to be your number one source for all your basketball wagering needs, because of course it is deep into basketball season. You've got pro and college hoops throughout the year with up to the minute odds, stats, and trends that you can follow your favorite team's path to the playoffs with in-game live betting contests and all the best player props. Experience the world's best wagering platform anytime from your desktop or your mobile devices. Head to Bet Online today to become part of the team, and remember to use the promo code BELIEVE for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That is Bet Online. The game starts here. Fabs, in terms of news in Indianapolis, we saw a wave on Monday of notes from insiders like Adam Schefter saying, this guy's not going to get tagged. This guy's not going to get tagged. It's a big free agency group of running backs this year in terms of like big name value anyway. And we found out just about none of them are going to get tagged. We know T. Higgins got tagged. That's going to happen. We've got some other defensive players that we think are probably going to draw the tag, but the running backs, it's not going to happen for.
Right.
So we get to now put them on different teams. If we think that they're going to leave, it does sound, based on what Rand Carthon, the Titans general manager, was saying today, he made some comments that kind of made it feel like Derrick Henry was not necessarily a top of list priority for them to re-sign. He was talking about the long-term health of the franchise. And so my guess is that Derrick Henry will be elsewhere. Are there any of these guys that you see returning to the city that they're in, or would like to see returning to the city that they're in?
I enjoy a little bit of chaos. So I would like some movement. I'd like to see some movement. I would love I have seen Saquon Barkley wearing a Cowboys uniform, like in so many different like social media posts. And I got to be honest with you, I kind of like it.
Yeah.
I would love to see that because I'm a diehard Cowboys fan and that would be fun. I'd like to see that. I'd love to see Derrick Henry in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. I think that's a perfect marriage. Big, bruising type of back. You could pair him with Keaton Mitchell, assuming he comes back from the ACL at some point. And that would be a nice addition to the Ravens offense. It would be good for Lamar Jackson. I mean, I would love that. I would love to see the Texans get one of these top guys because that offense is trending in an upward trajectory. And we saw that with the pass attack. And Devin Singletary was okay, but he's a free agent. And so, Josh Jacobs maybe going to Houston would be a lot of fun. Tony Pollard's out there. My guy Austin Eckler's out there. I have said that I would love to see Echo to Minnesota because they throw the ball a ton, but I don't know who the quarterback's going to be. We're going to get into all of that today and throughout the rest of the offseason. Minnesota would be fun. I mean, Chicago for Eckler would be fun too. We assume a rookie quarterback and Caleb Williams behind center. I'm sure Austin would be a nice little target for him out in space, out of the backfield. So, but Linz, there's like a handful of teams that could use a running back. And like, I started doing these landing spots for quarterbacks over at Sports Illustrated. My Justin Fields top 5 landing spots article is up there right now. And a lot of times the teams are going to be the same, right? Who needs a quarterback? It's the Steelers, it's the Atlanta, we kind of know. And it's the same thing with the running backs. Who needs to run? Well, if the Cowboys don't keep Pollard, the Cowboys are going to need a running back. So Saquon maybe makes sense. Gus Edwards is a free agent in Baltimore. And J.K. Dobbins, I mean, he's not going to be back there. He's a free agent. And I don't know who's going to sign him coming off of the multiple injuries. Like Baltimore. So it's going to be a lot of the same teams, right? Houston could use a running back upgrade as well. They're the Raiders. If they lose Jacobs, they're going to need somebody. So it's going to be a lot of the same teams. So it all depends on fit.
I don't know that the Raiders will need anyone, first and foremost. Zamir White looked pretty good. I mean, he looked good down the stretch, right? And he's inexpensive. So why? Especially in today's running back market, which I think is going to be the story of the offseason again, or one of the major storylines, because all these big names are going to hit the market. I think that they're going to devalue each other, right? Like the fact that there's so many of them that are available at the same time. And you're looking at, like, we keep talking about the Texans as a team that's playing with house money and let's throw all of these different pieces that just plug different holes, right? Running back, they could upgrade. We love their wide receivers already. We could maybe bring a different tight end in there. Dalton Schultz is a free agent. And so that's a fun game to play with that young offense. And, but I think, is it going to be Josh Jacobs? Is it going to be Saquon? And, when you're looking at these guys, is it Pollard? You could look at them and go back to their agents and be like, I don't know, like, you're all kind of same, right? Like, do any of them just clearly stand out amongst the other ones where you're like, Derrick Henry, like you mentioned, to Baltimore, that's a good fit. He's a specific type of running back. Like, that's a specific thing. But the rest of these guys, I mean, you're just going to compete against each other for the right number, right?
Yeah.
And the team is going to have the upper hand in this situation. I don't think that the number is going to be that high. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't max at 10 a year for these guys. Yeah, and I don't think that's what they're looking for at all.
It's a devalued position. I mean, we didn't even talk about, some of the other guys that are going to be available too, right? So we mentioned Eckler, we mentioned Jacobs, we mentioned Henry, Pollard's going to be out there. Singletary is going to be out there as well. Obviously not on the same level as some of these other players. Saquon's probably going to be, the top guy that people are going to be looking at as the number one free agent addition. For me, it's like about the age, right? Yeah. Saquon's in the prime of his career and Jacobs is in the prime of his career. Austin is kind of towards like the ender portion, ender portion. I'm making up words here of his career. So that's another thing that you're going to be thinking about too. And you're going to be looking at fit as well. So there are play. And we're not even talking about some guys who may end up being on different teams next season via potentially a trade, for example. I mean, we've been seeing trades all the time in the National Football League the last few seasons. So that could be an option as well. So we've got a lot of question marks in the backfields. And like, I'll give you an example. So for Tony Pollard, okay, who he didn't have a bad year. He just didn't meet the expectations that we all thought he would. He was okay, but he regressed in places where we thought he would improve, right? But if you put him into, Houston's system, for example, and, maybe paired him with another back, Damon Pierce is still going to be on that roster because he's cheap and he's young. Pollard's value could potentially go up. There's other situations too where there's back like, Deontay Foreman's going to be a free agent. He's going to end up playing somewhere, and that's going to affect some sort of backfield rotation, across the National Football League. DeAndre Swift, didn't even mention him. DeAndre Swift's a free agent. Does he go back to the Eagles, or he could fit in a couple of different spots too? So that's the position I think that's going to change the most from a value perspective in fantasy, because we're going to see so much movement among these backs. And there are some good backs still in the prime. I mean, Swift is in the prime of his career. I mentioned Saquon. I mentioned Jacobs. I mean, Pollard still is too. So it's not like all these guys are kind of old and washed. Derrick Henry's got a lot of carries on him, but there's still some pretty good young backs that are going to be available here via free agency. And remember, where those backs leave, that creates a void.
Yeah.
Somebody else has got to come in and fill that void. And that's going to create a lot of change in backfields across the NFL and from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, the Pollard one is a little bit interesting to me just because he was coming off of that fractured fibula at the beginning of the year, and then made these comments on Radio Row talking about the fact that he didn't really feel like himself, that he was back to full strength until week 11. And then if you look at the numbers, and he could have gone back and picked week 11 for this purpose, but the numbers post week 11 for the Cowboys rush offense and for him specifically in fantasy, he was RB8 from week 11 through the wild card round for us in fantasy, as opposed to RB20 weeks 1 through 10. So he didn't get where we wanted him to go this past year, but it's possible that had to do with just lingering effects from the injury, and maybe he'll get better. And nobody would know that information better than the Cowboys, right? So we'll figure out, what to make of this situation after we kind of have an idea of what they think of the situation to a degree. But you talked about some other teams there. And one of them that you mentioned was the Ravens, who did make some comments today. It's Tuesday right now in Indianapolis at the Combine. Both of them talked, John Harbaugh and Eric DeCosta, their general manager. With regard to the running back position, Eric DeCosta acknowledged that they needed more running backs. They only have 2 under contract right now, Justice Hill and Keaton Mitchell, and said that we would see them making acquisitions in the next few weeks. Acquisitions is a word that you would typically use to describe free agents, like signings, as opposed to draft picks. So for whatever that's worth, he did lament the lack of depth in the running back class, which is something that everybody's kind of on board with. It's not a particularly good running back class. That makes it tough for us to have a conversation about the rookie running backs in fantasy at this point, because I don't think we're going to see, it's possible we don't see a running back taken until round 3 or later. And if that's the case, then now you're putting them teams aren't drafting them because their talent blows their skirt up, right? They're drafting them because they're sure, they're good enough now. They're best available. Where do they fit on our board? I don't know. So it's not going to be hey, we desperately need a running back and we're targeting this one guy. It's going to be how the board falls. So for the most part, I think we're just going to kind of need to wait until after the draft to figure out where the rookie running backs, which ones have value to us in fantasy. Free agency will happen in a couple of weeks, and that we can have lots of conversations about, but I'm not sure that the rookies are going to have much of an impact immediately.
There's some backs that are coming out, that have, potential. Jonathan Brooks comes to mind coming off the ACL, but there isn't that back like Bijan who's Gucci, right? It's you're waiting. By the way, I snuck that in there because I wanted to sound young and hip. Because Matthew, my stepson, said yesterday, was there an earthquake in LA yesterday, by the way? There wasn't, right? There wasn't. Okay. I know of. Okay. So I was on the phone with him and he's like, I think we're having an earthquake. I'm like, what? How do you not know if there's an earthquake or not? It either is or it isn't. And I was like, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I'm Gucci. And I'm like, what the hell does that mean? What does it mean that you're Gucci? And he says that, well, it just means we're good. We're good. Okay. So I says, I'm going to use that because I want to sound cool, young, and hip. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Nope. It didn't work. It didn't work.
All right. So anyway,
especially when it needs like a 10-minute follow-up story about
exactly.
you wanting to sound young and hip.
I may throw it in there from time to time, but basically what I'm trying to say is there's not that guy that's like, no matter where this guy goes, boom, he's going to be awesome. More than any other year that I can remember. And a lot of this is, this is a year-to-year thing, but where these backs end up and the opportunities that they may or may not get is going to determine their value, right? I mean, I'll use like the Keyshawn Vaughn example from a few years ago. He ended up at Tampa Bay and you're thinking, oh man, you know what? Maybe Keyshawn Vaughn, there's an opportunity there. Maybe he's going to be, and he sucked. Obviously he hasn't done diddly poo, but like we raised his value a little bit because of opportunity. We go back to Monte Ball or Zach Stacy. I mean, I'm going way back, but like this is going to be that year where if say Houston doesn't add a free agent running back and they draft Jonathan Brooks, you're like, hey, now we're going to be talking about Jonathan Brooks. It's like, whoa, this guy could be awesome. And that's what it's going to be this season, I think, at the running back position among the rooks.
You mentioned Tampa Bay there. Jason Light, Bucs general manager, talked today in Indianapolis, and he had a few things to say about Rachaad White and their running back situation that I thought you might find interesting, Fabs.
Okay.
First of all, he said that Rachaad White was close to being an elite receiving back and thought he got better as a runner late in the season.
I would agree.
Head coach Todd Bowles said in Indy that he would like to have another running back to take the load off of Rachaad White, which I know is not what you want. We would prefer to have bell cows on every single team, right? But assuming that that's not true, and I will say this is one of the things I've said about Rachaad White since the season ended. And even at the end of the season, I have concerns about him because if you look at the advanced metrics, he's closer to the bottom of the league than he is at the top of the league in a lot of running back advanced metrics. Now, there's still, the jury's still out about how sticky those are year to year, how predictive they are, I guess, on a season to season basis. So I don't know, but he was not the best running back in the league this year. And my concern is that clearly in a perfect world, you would rather pass the ball further downfield with longer ADOT to pick up more yards to a wide receiver. So when you're throwing the ball a lot to a running back, that might be an indication of a breakdown in the offense that you would prefer to fix in the offseason, look for other ways to move the ball that way. So if your value to us in fantasy is that you're catching the ball a lot, we're going to continue throwing the ball to running backs. But if you cannot also run the ball efficiently and successfully to the point where they need to bring somebody else in, I think that that's concerning. That makes me devalue you from fantasy, from a fantasy standpoint, because I'm afraid that they might find a replacement in some way for some of your volume. And obviously volume is king for all of us. Are you concerned in that regard about Rachaad White?
You know how I talk about spidey senses? My spidey senses were tingling for Rachaad White last year. And I thought he was a sleeper and a good player and he exceeded expectations. My spidey senses are tingling on the other side. And I kind of agree with you. I tend to agree with you because of how good he was. And we're talking about a guy who was a top 8 running back in fantasy. And he was spectacular as a pass catcher in the second half of the season, especially. I do worry about that, though. I do worry that now that he's had that big year, that he's going to be a bit overvalued. And even though he's going to come with like a 3rd or 4th round price tag, I don't know that he's going to meet those expectations. So I kind of agree with you. And you have to think outside the box in fantasy. You have to, okay? Look at the crazy crap that happens every single year. Okay. Did you predict Jordan Love to be a top 5 quarterback or Brock Purdy to be a top 6 quarterback and better than Patrick Mahomes? And Lindsay and I have gotten into that on Fantasy Dirt, and we'll probably get into it again. No, nobody saw that coming. It was crazy town. Like some of the stuff that happened was Puka Nacua. Like, so sometimes you have to like think outside of the box and think, wait a minute, that's crazy. There's no way. Baker Mayfield was a better fantasy quarterback than Tom Brady was in his last year in Tampa. Did we? No. So like you have to think outside the box. And so saying things are outlandish, sometimes they're not outlandish. And I think saying that Rachaad White could end up being a disappointment in 2024 is not outlandish, despite the fact that he was very good in 2023.
What about the quarterbacks? A lot of quarterback news. There are a lot of teams trying to figure out who their quarterback is going to be next year, and certainly the Bears fall into that category.
Mhm.
And made some comments today. Ryan Poles, their general manager, that would indicate that they haven't made a decision yet. Whether or not that's true, who knows? But he did make some comments that I think push us in the direction of them drafting a quarterback this year and
Mhm.
trading Justin Fields. He said, if we go down that road of drafting a quarterback, I want to do right by Justin. Says if they decide to draft a quarterback, he doesn't think that it would be right not to trade Justin Fields by free agency.
Yes. Which, yeah, makes
So,
sense.
I mean, then that's like clock is ticking. Free agency is coming up in a couple of weeks. So we might get some clarity on this situation pretty soon. And then we'll, of course, have to revisit the conversation about who makes the move for Justin
Mhm.
Fields. Where does he go? And then what is the price point? Because we're also
Yeah.
seeing T. Higgins, he was tagged by the Bengals. And now there's talk about whether or not they should trade him. And there are reports that he would receive a 1 or a 2 in return. Ari Mirov
Totally
from the
see that. Yeah.
33rd team saying that. So if you're going to trade a 1, and I know that I am in the minority and I think you are with me, we keep hearing Justin Fields isn't going to go for a 1, it's a 2 or it's a 3. It's like lower than you think and there isn't much of a market there. I cannot. If you're going to give up a 1 for T. Higgins, then I don't understand the logic of like what we're doing here. If you're not going to get a 1 for Justin Fields,
I don't get
who
it. Yeah.
could very well still prove to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. And the value of having that way outweighs having a T. Higgins on your
Yep.
team. I don't get it.
100%. Quarterbacks are so far and away more valued than any other position on the planet. Like, honestly, right? I mean, quarterbacks are hard to find.
Yeah,
I mean, we only
clearly.
got 32 professional teams in the National Football League, and you can't find a good quarterback with how many billions of people on this planet for each of those 32 teams. And to think that Justin Fields is not worth a first round pick, like I listen, maybe at the end of the day he's going to go for 2 so I don't know, but like to me it's like, why the hell he's young? He's like what, 25? I mean, like why would you not want him for a 1? It makes no sense to me. The way that I would look at it is, okay, well, if you were coming out of college right now, would he be number 2? Caleb's is number 1. Would he be number 2? Like the guy would be a first round pick. Like it's not an old quarterback. I don't know. I don't get it. It's weird.
It's tricky
to me.
to compare him to, because my brother asked that yesterday. It was like, if he was coming out now, if he was in this class, but you can't really do that because your eval on the guys coming out of college and what we're seeing from all of these, everyone who's evaluating college quarterbacks right now is like, you're not seeing them do anything that they're going to do in the NFL. It's such a hard eval, right? Because the college game is so different. So I understand that, but you have questions that are legit questions. You're just projecting potential upside and ceiling and also where's the floor with them. With Justin Fields, you aren't doing that. We now know exactly what he looks like in an NFL offense. What we don't know is if you utilized him in a way where it played to his strengths completely and you had people around him, because 2 years ago he didn't have any weapons around him. Last year he was better in that department with DJ Moore, but they also like went right back to the starting line at the beginning of the year. What they were doing 2 years ago with him at the end of the year was putting up 30 points a game. Like the offense wasn't their problem. You could look at him and say, yeah, there's stuff that we still need to do in order for you to get better, Justin Fields, at playing quarterback in this league, but also this can work. We can put up 30 points a game and be fine. That the defense was the issue. But for whatever reason, they decided to just like rip up everything that they were doing at the end of that year and start over again and make him prove that he was a totally different quarterback, which didn't work. And then we reverted back again. So let's say we don't do that with him anymore and you just tailor an entire offense around him. I think you're dealing with a different set of question marks than you're dealing with the rookie quarterbacks. But I think it's the same type of thing, right? Like there are questions that are unanswered. And I think it's entirely possible that he checks those boxes and the answer is yes. And he has a ton of success. And by the way, if we're thinking that the answers are just no, then what are we even talking about with Chicago? Because people are also having this conversation as if Chicago should keep Justin Fields. There is a large faction of people that believe that they should build that way. So if that's true, then he's clearly worth a 1. Right? Because then he's effectively worth a 1 to the Bears. So that's just a fascinating conversation to me. And we'll get answers coming up soon about that. Terry Fontenot who's the Falcons general manager, made some comments today. And we all know that they're going to go in a different direction at quarterback, but boy, they better now. And at the backup quarterback position too, because he said, what did he say? If our quarterback play was better last year, Terry Fontenot didn't say that. I'm sorry. It was Raheem Morris, who's their new head coach, who said, if we had better quarterback play last year, I don't think I would be here right now. Like they wouldn't have fired Smith. We wouldn't be looking for a new quarterback. So
they're gonna have a new quarterback, no question. And again, I wrote an article over at Sports Illustrated about the 5 best landing spots for Fields, and I mean Atlanta's right there.
Yeah,
like think about that, Linz. Atlanta has used a first-round pick on an offensive skill position 3 years in a row. Pitts, Drake London, and then of course Bijan. And then you put Justin Fields in there. Yeah. That could be a fun offense, man. I mean, like I don't know much about Zach Robinson as an OC because he's never been one. Right. He was a passing game coordinator with the Rams. He comes from the McVay tree, which you see as a positive, I guess. So, but think about Fields in Atlanta. That would be a lot of fun. Now, I could also say that about Kirk Cousins. That would be fun too.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 top guys. And then I guess you could throw Russell Wilson in there, maybe as a distant third.
No one's calling. Did you see that comment from?
Yeah, but they have, and like he has come out and said, I'd like to win 2 championships with the Broncos. I'm like, hey, dude, how about winning a division, for crying out loud? You ain't going to win no damn Super Bowl with the Broncos. But you know what, Lindsay, like I still think there's like teams out there where Russell will be the consolation prize, right? So like if the Raiders, like, I mean, if they can't get Fields, I think Russell would be the consolation prize potentially. If the Steelers can't get Fields, then maybe Russell's the consolation prize there. There's several teams, like I could see Russell going to like the Patriots, although the Raiders, it's such a Raiders move for them to make. But the two first sort of, dominoes that have to fall for me is like Fields and Cousins. Now I want Cousins to go back to Minnesota because he's been fantastic there in that offense. He's perfect fit. And guys, before he tore out Achilles, he was one of the best quarterbacks in fantasy football. And remember, he didn't have Justin Jefferson for a little bit too, because he got hurt. Imagine Cousins with with Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson. Holy crap.
Right.
Like that would be awesome. And then you throw, they're going to have to upgrade in their backfield for sure. You get an Eckler or somebody like that. I mean, it doesn't have to be like a huge like splash type of move. Although I think Austin would be, a big move for them. That offense is going to be sick. And I would love to see Cousins just stay there because selfishly I want points. And any other place, I hope to get him, but I don't know for sure. I know in Minnesota he's going to score. Obviously, we have to be concerned about the Achilles and the health of that. But we've seen some video on social media of him looking like he's on the right path to recovery. Mm-hmm. But like, if you talk about the top 3 quarterbacks, it really is. And some may put Baker ahead of Russell. And I totally understand that from a fantasy standpoint. He was better than Russell. But I think Baker's staying in Tampa. Yeah. Right. So I don't know that he's actually going to be available. So that's why I say that Russell's going to be 3 out of that group, right?
I mean, I think I'm with you that I don't think it's even clear that he's 3 over Baker, which is nuts that's where we are.
Yeah.
But also you've got George Payton from the Broncos standing in front of people today and saying, when asked about the trade market for Russell Wilson, we haven't been contacted by anybody. Nobody's called, which is really interesting. Not just that that's true, which I actually don't think is that shocking, but I'm not a huge Russell Wilson fan. And I don't think, I mean, the contract is nuts, right? Nobody wants what he's selling at that price anymore.
But I think the Broncos have to cover, like, I'd have to get into, but I was reading about it today. It's like $39 million guaranteed for like this season. And the Broncos are on the hook for it. So if they cut Russell, that means they get out of like the $37 million that they would owe him in 2025. Because remember, they sat him down at the end of the season because he had an injury clause in there. And so like, they're still on the hook for $39 million, I think. Like, if my memory serves me. So like, if they cut him, the Broncos are still going to be on the hook for that money. And so somebody's going to be able to get Russell on the cheap this season.
Yeah.
And they're end up getting him on the Broncos dime. So,
But don't you think it's still telling that they're not calling to negotiate?
100%.
Like, that they don't want him
100%.
so badly where they're saying, like, "Gosh, there's a lot of teams looking for quarterbacks this year, and we would like to beat team X to the punch because we think we're far enough down the board that we might not be able to we might not have the assets to go get Justin Fields or Kirk Cousins or, whatever. So
Yep.
let's get in this Russell Wilson game." Like, they're not in the game. There's no game. There's no market for him. Nobody is clamoring. I think you're right, and you hit the nail on the head when he's the consolation prize, and that's just where we are. That's who he is at this stage of the game.
Yeah,
and
or
maybe,
like a bridge guy, right? I mean, like a team.
Yes.
A team that maybe wants to draft like a Bo Nix, who maybe isn't like going to be ready to start week 1 as a rookie, or a Penix, like something like that, where like Russell comes in and is the bridge, and like for a year, maybe half a year, he's the quarterback, and then the rookie comes in, which is crazy to think because 3 years ago, this guy was one of the best quarterbacks like on the planet. And oh my God, he's going to Denver, and Denver's got all these great weapons, and holy cow, they're going to the Super Bowl, and Sean Payton and all this crap. And like, it didn't work out. So it is crazy to think that Russell has fallen off the cliff so far, although he wasn't awful from a fantasy perspective last year. He was a QB 14. He wasn't terrible. He just was inconsistent, and that's a problem. That's a problem for a lot of the quarterbacks. But then when you look at this quarterback position overall, think about how deep this position is going to be. You're going to get Aaron Rodgers back. I mean, I hope for a whole season, right? I hope so.
Yeah.
Fields will go someplace where a team needs a quarterback. Say he goes to Atlanta. And then
hopefully where someone values his skills.
Right. Then Caleb goes to, say, Chicago. Yep. Washington gets Drake May. Then maybe Sam Howell's on the move and ends up going someplace else where he'd have a chance to start. Russell ends up going maybe to Las Vegas or Pittsburgh if another team can. And then he's going to be and I know he's not as good as he was years ago, but still, like, you're adding to the depth of the quarterback position. And then you got Jaden Daniels, who, hell, I mean, he could be the best fantasy quarterback in this class because he can run like hell. So the quarterback position is going to be wicked deep from a fantasy standpoint. I think people have to certainly keep that in mind because of what's going to happen and the things that are going to change and the puzzle pieces that are not in their correct spots now are going to be there. And so quarterback's going to be a whole hell of a lot of a different scenario next year, like last season. And Lindsay and I have talked about this. Like, we both kind of bought in, like, if I can get Hurts, or if I can get Mahomes, or if I can get Allen, or if I can get one of these top 3-4 guys, like, I'm going to go and get them early, even though I don't typically do that. And that strategy, for the most part, blew up on our face. And I ain't going back to that. No. And this year, it makes sense to even wait even longer.
Totally.
Because there's going to be better quarterbacks. It's going to be a deeper position. And you don't really need to have, like, this, like, high QB1. I'll get Kirk Cousins, and then I'll back him up with, I don't know, Caleb Williams. Or I'll get Anthony Richardson and end up backing him up with, I don't know, Drake May. And, like, neither one of those guys is going to cost me a top 40 or 50 pick. Like, I think maybe Richardson.
Would you back up Anthony Richardson with Drake May? That's not where I would go.
No, I'm just throwing names out there of, like, I love this guy and he's going to be my starting quarterback. Right. But then I'll take a guy with potential late as his backup.
Well, but I guess that's my question. Because for somebody like Anthony Richardson, who still feels like he has tons of unknowns attached to him.
Well, you're worried about the injuries. Yes.
Well, yeah. And so I'm actually thinking whoever I back him up with, I need to be ready to play. And Anthony Richardson's the guy I would take earlier. But I think that in that case, and this isn't necessarily, but like, this is, I think, a doable thing to get him and Jordan Love later, right? Like somebody like that's a little bit more sturdy, and you might actually prefer to have Jordan Love. But in terms of where your ADP is going to probably shake out, like those are two that you could probably get together. I want someone that I can plug in for sure. Like Drake May, we don't know that he's not going to be this year's Bryce Young. You know what I mean? Like where you're just like, that's not playable for a year.
That's crazy. And that drives home the point. Jordan Love's going to be available in probably round 9.
That's my
name. In that ballpark, round 8, round 9, you're going to be able to get this kid. And he was a QB5 this past season. That's how deep it's going to be. I mean, hell, think about Purdy. Purdy was the QB6, guys. He was better than Patrick Mahomes in fantasy. And he's going to get drafted in the double-digit rounds. And there are some people out there in the NFL world that think Kirk Cousins is going to San Francisco. I think it's crazy town. But, like, Purdy's going to be the quarterback there. I have no doubt about that. But, like, as good as he was, like, he's still not. I mean, Dak Prescott was really good this year. Really, really good this past season. You think he's going to be a top 50 pick? Hell no. He's not going to be. Probably not going to be a top 60 pick. Right? Probably going to go somewhere, round 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that area. That's how deep quarterback is. And it's going to get even deeper with all the moves that are going to be happening in the next several months.
It's crazy. And I'm totally with you. This is, again, a year where we're going back to waiting on quarterbacks, and Jordan Love is the name that I'll have circled. Just watch his ADP. Because if, as long as his ADP stays roughly in the range where it is right now, right, where you're getting him in what the SiriusXM host league mock draft that was done, it was probably a month ago now, right? But I just keep going back to that. I think he went in the 12th round. And if Jordan Love's going in the 12th round, then like we're fine waiting on quarterbacks, right? Like that's kind of like the name that I'll have circled, and I'll just be tracking him for
think
draft.
about that offense. There's a bunch of kids in that offense, and now they all got 1 or 2 years of experience under their belt. Poof. I could see myself having a lot of Jordan Love shares. I liked him. He was like one of my breakout quarterbacks from last season. I did not think he was going to be that good. And stupidly, Kenny Pickett was also on that list. Spidey senses did not work in that case. Yeah, but I mean, I was a fan of Love. I thought, hey, he's in a good position. This offense is young in Green Bay. And if they get a good young running back too, I mean, Aaron Jones was good in the last like 3 or 4 weeks of the season. But I mean, let's be honest, his best probably is behind him. AJ Dillon's a free agent. You get rid of that guy. He hadn't worked out. You get a good young running back in there, pair him with Aaron Jones, and then future, he's the guy. Holy cow. Green Bay's offense is going to be sick. That division is going to be a lot of fun too. The NFC North. You got Detroit, who just came off an NFC Championship appearance and maybe should have won. Minnesota's going to score a ton of points. Chicago's going to have Caleb Williams. They got a ton of draft capital. They got a lot of money to spend. And then you got Green Bay, who, oh, by the way, beat my stupid Cowboys in a road game. First 7 to ever beat a 2 in the playoffs. And then they should have beaten San Francisco, but they choked at the end of the game. That division is going to be good, and it's going to be very fantasy friendly as well. So certainly something to think at. And I'm on board. I see Lindsay Rhodes having a lot of Jordan Love and Caleb Williams quarterback situations.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, well, for those of you who don't know, Lindsay's a USC homer. Trojans fight on, or whatever the hell they do.
You know exactly what we do.
Trojans fight.
Don't say or whatever the hell.
Fight on. Is it fight on?
You know it's fight on.
But see, yeah, but, I mean, there's probably a lot of colleges where it's fight.
You can't say things like Gucci to try and sound young and hip, and then go or fight or whatever it is, and pretend like you don't know that. Come on. All right, so Fabs.
Well, we're nothing but Gucci here, Rhodes.
Oh God. Okay, so we've given you a lot of fantasy people that we believe in heading into next season. Give me something else to believe in, Fabs, as we wrap up today's edition of the show.
See, now, for those of you familiar with the SiriusXM show, we did our dirty thought. We're not going to do that. We are going to do our thought that is something that we believe in. Okay. But it doesn't have to be fantasy football or NFL or anything like that.
All right. These are the rules.
It could be anything.
Okay.
And I'm going to get a little sentimental here. Okay. We get a little sentimental.
Shoot.
All right. 3 of my best friends were with me this weekend down in Florida, from Connecticut. Dan, who I grew up with, I've known him since I was 5. We've been together since we were in kindergarten. And then my buddy Bill and Matt, we were together since 13, like high school, right? I had such a great time connecting with them because remember, I've been in California out with Lindsay for like a million years, and I didn't really get to see these guys.
Like literally with Lindsay.
Well, you know what I mean.
In the same state as me.
They're 15 years. You know what I mean? So like it's a long time. So it's so good to be around the good people in your life. Like I had Lindsay and and many others out in California when I was there. These are the people that I grew up with. Never take your friends for granted, man. Like it was just so great to spend time with them, hang out with them, and we talked about old times and all these dumb things that we did as kids, like all these stories, and you remember this and you remember that. And it's like, man, like we're all 50 now, right? They're all married and have multiple kids. I am not married and have no kids, not on my own, besides Matthew. And if you guys follow me, about Matthew.
Who keeps you young and hip.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Matthew's Gucci. I try to be Gucci, and oftentimes I'm not. For the most part, I'm not. But it was so good to see them. Yeah. Don't take your friends for granted. Spend as much time as they can with them. I know that like everyone's got families and kids and work and everything else, but keep the people close to you. Let's put it that way. Because even though these guys live, 3-hour flight away and all the way up the East Coast. I'm still in touch with them constantly, and it was just so good to see them. So, as we get into, it's a crazy world we live in out there, right? I mean, everything's kind of nuts. Just remember who your friends are, and remember how special those people in your life are. Because I've always thought this way about these guys and some others, and man, it was just really good to see them and spend time with them. And it's good for the soul to spend time with the people that you love and care about. So.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, we actually need reminders to do that, I think, sometimes, right? Like we get so caught up in our day to day and what we're actually trying to accomplish within our work lives and stuff like that, that at the end of the day, you forget to make time for the things that actually matter. So that's a good reminder. My something to believe in is about the combine, which I believe in. Sorry.
I'm shocked. The combine? Really? Lindsay? Okay, go ahead.
I know. And it's something that I actually didn't know, wasn't on my radar in terms of things to watch. You guys have all heard about the top quarterbacks who are not throwing at the combine this year. And this happens every year where some of the top guys end up saying, I'm not going to participate. I'm just going to do exactly what I say I'm going to do at my pro day or whatever. And they control the narrative because they can afford to do that. And they have more to lose than they have to gain. So that's nothing new in that regard. But the top 3 guys are not throwing at the combine. Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously is not participating in the traditional sense. So what should you be looking for? Well, Tage Seth from Sumer Sports, who is a data scientist and looks at things through a numbers lens, and I think is a great follow on Twitter. He's really smart in terms of the way that he looks at football. He said that the thing that he's looking for this week at the combine is the tight ends. The tight end, this is what matters, because he said the top tight ends in the league are usually have a relative athletic score of 9 or 10 or higher. Like that, you're looking for a very high relative athletic score. And that is what seems to be sticky from the combine. Like you need to actually check certain boxes about your athleticism. And then those are the tight ends that end up being very successful in the NFL. So that's a number to maybe keep your eye on with regards to Brock Bowers or anybody else at the tight end position. He says that's a sticky number that correlates to success in the NFL. So when we're trying to figure out who's going to be the next big fantasy tight end, and I think that that's something that we've been doing for the last few years, right? Like these tight ends that have come out have been such that we can plug them right into an offense. And I know that you had concerns about this last year about Sam Laporta and some of those guys in their rookie year, and they went ahead and answered all of those questions. Now we feel comfortable about that, and maybe we'll feel more comfortable about a Brock Bowers, but that's a number that you're looking for there. You need a relative athletic score of 9 or higher. And he says that that's what teams will be looking for with regards to that position. So that's what I will be looking for.
I feel like my relative athletic score would be about 2.
Fucking low.
Maybe 3.
Yeah, me too.
Did you just swear?
We're allowed to.
Effing low.
I know, it's so fun because it's a podcast. It's not serious anymore. So you're gonna get the real me, dude. You're gonna get the real me. Till somebody says, please stop being that person.
And I can't tell you how happy I am that Lindsay and I get to party together for at least a couple times a week here on the Believe Fantasy Football Show. And hopefully you guys are going to enjoy the program on Tuesdays and Thursdays into the next several weeks, and very likely into free agency and potentially into the draft. We'll keep you guys all effing in
no.
in mind when things break. You will be the first to know, all of you dirtbags out there who are tuning in.
Yeah, thanks for doing that. And like Fab said, we'll be back again on Thursday with lots more to discuss. Again, still combine week, so we'll have a ton more headlines that will have popped up between now and then obviously some performances to discuss of things that happen on the field. Thanks for listening to the Believe Fantasy Football Show presented by Bet Online. For Fabs, I'm Lindsay. We'll see you back here again on Thursday.